morning, everybody. Yay! And I would like to start, my first is that we have lost a wonderful activist in disability, and her name is Humpo Ndebele, and what a wonderful person that worked in Africa in particular, and she was a champion for us, traveled all over the world to spread the news for what is the importance of being an occupational therapist. I'm not an occupational therapist, I am only an activist. And that's why I want to start and to welcome you by saying, Amandla! There's it, comrades, because occupational therapy means you must be an activist. In Africa in particular, is to look at the glue. You can't see occupational therapy as part of, and if I do this, this is actually my connection with the, at the back IT, and I've got 5 minutes. I can't speak about my life story and the importance of occupational therapists in 5 minutes. Okay, that you must do in all for 4 days. You're going to discuss this, and to the world where I have a wonderful country, but so important is to understand is that with accessibility currently, we're still just thinking a little bit of ramps. We now need to look at how do we move forward. And most important is that it's not just about ramps. You know, I can climb this with assistance. It's about attitudes. And today I'm going to talk to you just slowly and very quickly. To the organizers, I said they must tell me when it's 1 minute, 3 minutes, whatsoever. But what is most important for us is to look at in general also is that where do we fit in? How do we see ourselves as occupational therapists? You can't just see yourself as just researchers. It needs to be emancipatory researchers. I've put a book together to look at me. 3 of these women, they died. And I'm not selling the book at all because it's sold out, but please don't Google it because I'm naked, totally, fully naked in that book. And you know why I did the book in particular is to say, look at us and don't look away. Because that is your role as occupational therapists, is for society not to look away from persons with disability. Your main role is to look at how do you bring the interprofessionalities together. You're the glue to what we call in all the models that is there. It's extremely important. When you come from Africa, I'm a proud African woman. I'm a proud South African, but I'm from this continent. But the challenges that we have is huge. So you're from the UK. Where is the UK? Okay? There's Sweden, there's all over. It was so happy for me to see everybody is here. Is to look at what is working in your country. We have enough policies in the world. It's about now implementation. Okay? On your right-hand side, you will see now that it's looking at action-driven emancipation research in an inclusive society. Okay? You can do that later in your, and that is what I've developed. I've developed a model specifically for Africa per se, is that what is the relevancy that we're looking at? What is the relevancy of your profession? You must ask that every single day. The next slide, please. When we look at the puzzle here, it should be action-driven. It should be, it's about resilience that you're talking about. You're talking about agency, self-agency, emancipation, about taking charge and self-acceptance. My good grief, a doctor, what is in their curricula is to heal. Now I come. No? I had polio when I was 3 months old. I'm a proud 51-year-old woman. I should have never got polio. It's an apartheid story that I'll tell you later. Google that part, not the look at me part. Google the polio side. Okay? But the most important part is that there was no occupational therapist. The community, how must I be? I can only talk about myself and my friends and being an activist. Is that how do you bring me into the society so that the attitude should change and so that I could have access to education, access to health care, but access to health care that understand. Not access to health care to cure my polio. It won't cure my polio. Yeah? I've got polio. But how are you as occupational therapists going to assist me, not just with self-acceptance, but in society to be integrated? That's a big thing that you need to understand. In Africa in particular, we call it the African disease. No? Tomorrow I will be walking like this up and down. That's why I said, please put me on because I'm the rock star here tonight, Dave. So, but the next day, the next decade, when you come and see me again, I will be in a wheelchair because this glue as an occupation has failed me because we don't have enough emphasis of being an occupational therapist. My friend Dr. Lucia has introduced me. When we first met in the 80s, I was a wild activist. My God, running with one leg with tutu. And I was at the University of the Wild Blacks, UWC. I'm a proud alumni there. But she said she's doing occupational therapist. We asked her, what? My God, what is this thing? I didn't understand it. So, just let you know what is a physiotherapist, but you don't know what is an occupational. So, what I want to leave you with number one, my time is nearly up, is that the awareness of this wonderful profession must become much more visible in all societies. Don't think if you're from Europe or from all over, you don't have a responsibility. You have a responsibility in Africa to assist us, to look at the resources. We talk about equality and equity. We can never be equal if we don't have resources. And my main drive is about equality versus equity. Those can't be without each other. So if you in this conference think you're only going to talk about occupational therapists, how can los gaat huis toe. Just go home. Just go home and have a lekker party here in Cape Town. Then you can dance from this part to that part. So all that I want to say to you is that it's extremely important to understand, in particular, where we, as I can only talk as an African. So in the African positions is that we have a unique context. Inequality, equity of people with disabilities, challenges that we face in the rural areas, it is vast. Am I right, colleagues? Am I talking here the right? Poverty, transport difficulties. All that I want to say to you, you can flip to the last slide because there you see my beautiful son. I had a beautiful son. He was my life, Adam. He died, he was 16 years old, 8 months ago. He was cerebral palsy. And I talk from a very privileged point of view because Adam had access to the integrated approach of being cared for. Occupational therapist, with a physiotherapist, with all the medical care, but an integration. So he had quality of life. So I use my position and blessed position that I have and had with Adam to say that every child, every human being should have access to what I had. And I could only have it because I had a job. But if you are in the rural areas, I want to end off. If you are in the rural areas and you're poor and you live on a SASSA grant and you have no transport, it's a nightmare. And that is why I want you to discuss in your groups that we can't be only occupational therapists without community workers. CDW is extremely important. You have the knowledge. You have the research capacity. But how do you capacitate the community worker that needs to be the glue between you and policies and on the ground and connect with the healthcare systems? This is not just an African challenge. This is a global challenge. I thank you.